Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Data Center Automation in the Age of Cloud webinar. My name is Rolly Gould and I will be the moderator for today's event. Our featured speaker is Torsten Volk, Research Director at Enterprise Management Associates. Torsten has over 10 years managing highly complex IT projects within the virtualization, cloud, and custom software application development realm. His previous work has consisted of helping national and international organizations like the World Bank and Cricket Communications evaluate and identify the business value of emerging enterprise technologies. And before I hand it over to Torsten, I did want to thank the research sponsor of the Data Center Automation Research, Abiquo. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speaker, Torsten Volk. Torsten?
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So what we are talking about today is the impact of data center automation on cloud. And it's actually pretty interesting because what prompted this study, what made us basically, go and say we have to do this study right now was a previous study that identified automation as the key issue when organizations could not get the ROI out of the initial cloud project that they thought they could. It was about 80% if you look at this chart to the right. If you add the people who agree and strongly agree with this statement, it was about 80% of organizations who felt like they did not make their data center automation homework sufficiently. They did not do their data center automation homework sufficiently before they jumped into the cloud, so to say. So by definition, cloud requires data center automation because offering IT resources in a self-service manner leads to a huge number of virtual servers and applications everywhere. So provisioning those resources from a network, compute, and storage perspective and managing them through their life cycle has to be automated to be efficient. Another observation is that generally we find that business units, once they have the chance to self-service provision to take advantage of the cloud, they come up with all types of use cases and they start provisioning the hell out of the new cloud platform, which is fantastic at the beginning. But at a certain point in time, we found that customers run into trouble, and that trouble is in a lot of cases due to a lack of automation. So today we want to make sure everybody walks away with a clear understanding of how data center automation and cloud are interrelated, and we will provide hints regarding what you should do next in your data center automation strategy. The agenda will kick off by taking a look at the adoption rates in terms of the individual data center automation disciplines. We've split data center automation into about 20 individual disciplines that I'm going to show in a moment. We look at the business drivers behind data center automation. We look at what influences the ROI and what are companies' and customers' current main pain points. Then we'll draw the connection between data center automation and cloud ROI, and we'll focus on what can be done in terms of homework to get more value out of your cloud. So in general, as all of our research-based webinars, this webinar will offer the opportunity to learn from the pain of others, which is always a good thing. It will basically show what people who have deployed cloud, all of those participants have deployed cloud stage 1 or release 2, 3, 4, and we'll show what they have learned and what pains they went through and how data center automation can help remediate those pain points. At the end, we will make sure to leave sufficient time for Q&A. So let's jump right in and take a look at the automation status quo and see what your peers in the industry are doing today and in the near future. So the first discipline or set of disciplines is server management. And you see backup and recovery, lifecycle management for virtual machines and applications. Lifecycle management for virtual machines and applications is at the bottom of the list. Backup and recovery is at the top of the list. And service level agreement management is also relatively far down. But when we look at what companies are planning to invest in the next 24 months, that is actually excellent, because VM lifecycle management and SLA monitoring and management is right at the top of the list. And that shows that organizations have really understood that those two disciplines are critical for cloud. Under infrastructure management, it's about what we'd expect. Storage automation and server automation are the most adopted disciplines, and at the bottom we find data center infrastructure management, which is not a surprise because data center infrastructure management is a pretty new discipline, and it is, however, essential for cloud. So when we look at the next 24 months and what organizations are planning to invest in, within the next 24 months, we see data center infrastructure management right at the top. And also network management or network automation, which is, for the biggest part due to virtualization products in this area that companies are attacking. Then let's look at data center management automation. We see asset management and capacity management are at the top. Operations analytics is far back, and chargeback and showback are all the way at the bottom. That's, a problem in that, as I said in the beginning, business units, when you offer them cloud self-service provisioning, they go crazy and they start coming up with all kinds of projects and they provision. And if it doesn't cost them anything to self-service provision environments of any kind and size, then, why would they be careful in terms of shutting the environments down again and, surrendering resources back to the pool? So what has to happen is they have to be held accountable to showback and chargeback. And when we look at the next 24 months and what organizations are investing in, who have adopted cloud, we see showback and chargeback right at the top, and we see also operations analytics pretty high up, which is great news. Specifically, operations analytics is required because you need to rapidly increase the management capacity for the infrastructure. And you can't do that, you can't increase that capacity by hiring more people, simply, because nobody gets that approved anymore. So if you have more complexity in your data center because people provisioning more and more cloud environments, business units are provisioning more and more application environments, then operations analytics has to take on the role of ongoing performance management and, dynamic threshold management, to make sure everything remains under control. So just to sum this up, this was a quick overview of what companies are doing, organizations are doing today, and what they're planning in the next 24 months. There are a lot of gaps, but there is a significant awareness of those gaps, and that's excellent because companies, they've felt the pain. All of those companies, again, have deployed release 1 or a later release of cloud, so they felt that, wow, we need to do something in data center automation, and they are ready to invest. And, all of us can actually learn and see what those companies believe that they can gain cloud ROI through. So when we move on and take a look at satisfaction, it's actually pretty interesting, and we have to say that those bars add up to 100%. So what we ask is, which discipline are you the most satisfied with? And that's one discipline. That can't be multiple disciplines, it's just one discipline. So those percentages are 100 altogether. So it tells us that in terms of server management, automation, and backup are the most mature. Patch distribution, OS provisioning are also at the top. And at the bottom are, again, application performance management, lifecycle management, and database automation. So in those areas, there is still work to be done. Next one is infrastructure management. Again, we see at the bottom, data center infrastructure management received the fewest votes in terms of, what you are the most happy with. And job scheduling, it's a little bit surprising, but it probably is seen as a commodity and received that many votes because of this. So job scheduling, most people are satisfied with, and storage automation is also pretty high on that list. So like we saw before, companies know that they have to do something in terms of data center infrastructure management. Then in terms of data center management automation tasks, we see again asset management is at the top of the list of the most satisfied companies, and charge package showback are at the bottom, also pretty much expected. So the disciplines with the least satisfaction are mostly the same disciplines where organizations are planning to do more within the next 24 months, which again is good news. It shows there is homework to be done, and organizations know that they have to make investments. Now, let's look at why organizations are investing in automation. What are the business drivers? What are the business drivers for spending money on data center automation? And the main goal is to reduce operational expense and also to increase staff productivity, because it's a simple equation. Every dollar that you are not spending on keeping the lights on basically making your business units happy, you can spend on additional projects. You can proactively try and build some new capacities and capabilities in your data center. So organizations are really looking to relieve the effort of keeping the lights on through automation. What we find on that slide is that compliance and security are pretty low down on the list. However, they are in real life, they are a huge challenge to organizations that we talk to. So in that area, there's still a lot of room for improvement. Moving on to the next one, where we were looking at whether investments paid off in data center automation, and we found that yes, but to a modest degree. So you can see that 28% of companies said yes, through more data center automation, we actually really reduced our operational expense. Especially interesting is that risk reduction and compliance are not addressed well. Also, organizations did not feel that they managed to free up significant resources for strategic projects. And that's basically what I said before. They did not manage to cut hours for keeping the light on and transfer those hours to doing something more innovative than maintaining existing systems. And yeah, it's surprising that not even the operational expense, the OPEX reduction, was as effectively addressed as organizations would have expected. Only 28% said yes, we received the OPEX reduction that we expected. So in summary, that needs to get much better in the age of cloud, and cloud is basically a multiplier that causes an incredible increase in complexity and a host of new requirements that have to be effectively addressed through data center automation. So companies are coming to that realization, but they are not entirely successful yet putting this into practice. And when we look at the most common shortcomings and pain points basically of DCA, we find that it's integration with other enterprise tools and application awareness that is the main issue. So basically silos. One part of the organization, of the IT organization, does not really talk to another part. And there's a lot of applications and automation tools in those organizations, and they may be good tools, but they're not talking to each other on a technical level either. So that is a significant problem. Analytics and capacity planning are also a big issue, as you can see on this slide. And interface complexity and a lack of a central control panel are a challenge. So this is all about silos and finding point solutions instead of having an integration of the individual data center automation tools. What's also interesting is that 45% of mid-enterprises, and that's not on this chart, this is just something that we found that I want to briefly mention. Almost half of mid-sized enterprises, 45%, complained about interface complexity. That was their number one concern in the mid-enterprise market. So probably also goes in line with this issue of having too many interfaces and having too many people learn those interfaces. In summary, this slide should be regarded basically as a punch list for improvements in terms of data center automation. And that's not just to better do your homework for cloud. that's also to just, be more efficient in the data center in general. You need to do those things that you see high up on that list. And then, obviously in the next step, you relate those to cloud and you connect those through cloud. And it's interesting, one more fact that I want to show in that regard is when we zoom in, we find that large enterprises are really getting killed by complexity. So there's all those applications, we see enterprises, and you might have a situation like that where you have many thousands of enterprise applications. You talk to companies that have 6,000 enterprise applications, and we find the larger those companies are, as you can see on the chart, the more of a problem is to manage those applications through their life cycle. And the more companies find a lack of capabilities, of automation capabilities, in terms of application lifecycle management to be a huge problem that prevents them from getting out of their cloud deployment what they thought they should. Key areas for improvement in data center automation in general. Security is at the top of the list, and funnily enough, it's also at the top of the list for private and public cloud in our previous research that we published in February. Integration of tools, yet again, it's a big, significant pain point that companies have to address. Predictive analytics, dynamic thresholding, and proactive warnings. I talked about this before. You get more and more complexity, and while it was fine, for example, in workload automation, job scheduling, while it was fine to manage thresholds manually and to just correlate them to what you knew the business wants, that's not the case anymore. Today we need something that analyzes SLAs and other business requirements, compliance requirements, security requirements, and automatically comes up with application thresholds and adjusts those and sends out warnings if they are missed. In summary, that's what vendors and customers need to focus on right now to achieve better data center automation return on investment. So if we take a step back and take a look at what actually works, also pretty interesting, we asked organizations to quantify what they are saving in terms of staff hours through the individual disciplines, this list of disciplines. And interestingly enough, there was one superstar discipline, and that was IT process automation, where companies across the board, we looked at companies 1,000 staff and over. So companies 1,000 staff and over saved on average 1,924 hours per month through IT process automation. So that's an interesting finding. So that really shows that IT process automation is an area that can save you significant staff hours. Risk management was number 2, but about half the hours savings. 922 hours saved per month is still a significant number. It's just not quite as spectacular as ITPA. And it's also important to note that it's not all about saving staff hours. You need to save staff hours, but it's also about, curbing complexity. So there is disciplines that you see at the bottom, again, chart back and show back. And those disciplines, they don't save a lot of staff hours at first glance, but they will curb sprawl of virtual resources, applications, as well as servers, storage, and network by making people accountable for their provisions. So that will also save staff hours indirectly. So in my opinion, it's also very important. They are also very important disciplines. So all in all, it seems like ITPA is the most effective in terms of OpEx savings. When we look at the bottom of the list, again, we have disciplines like patch distribution, application lifecycle management, network automation. Those are disciplines that are immature to a big degree, but they will also prove to be very important in cloud environments. So as automation frees up resources for the business, why do organizations not do more of it? What is holding them back from doing more of it? And cost is at the top of the list. So that doesn't come as a surprise. What's interesting is politics is number 2 of that list. So then we have expertise, and it's hard to say, exactly what organizations are struggling with. Basically, they don't have the time to read up on what's coming out in data center automation that helps them save money on the new technologies that are coming out every day. And often automation disciplines are just evaluated in an isolated manner. And that's a significant problem that I talked about before. They are much more powerful if they're integrated together versus, if every section of the IT department has their own tools and ignores, the task of making those tools talk to each other. And that is detrimental to cloud ROI in a significant way. So when we make the connection here between the previous study that was called Demystifying Cloud, and that showed us this chart basically as the core, as the crux, so to say, where about 80% of companies believe they do not get enough cloud ROI, they do not get the expected cloud ROI because of lack of automation. We have this new slide here that underlines exactly that finding, where organizations think there's a tremendous impact of data center ROI on cloud, and they still have a problem. They're faced with the problem that they're not able to make this connection and to do their homework just yet. They know they have to do it, but they haven't done it yet. So it is a significant challenge and area for investment is what we found on this. And the study really underlines that organizations are very aware. When you look at this slide where we ask about the individual disciplines of data center automation and their impact on cloud ROI, we see that it is a significant impact. You can see risk management, database automation, operating system provisioning, but also IT process automation are the top data center automation disciplines in terms of impacting cloud ROI. So those are the disciplines that companies are looking to do more with to get more out of their cloud. And just for clarification, when I use the term cloud in our definition is the policy-driven self-service provisioning of pooled IT resources, storage, network, compute, as well as the middleware, the databases, and the applications that sit on these components. So if we drill down a little bit here, then it's very interesting to see that that IT process automation is becoming more important for cloud deployment the bigger the company is getting. Pretty interesting to see, but it's also pretty obvious because the more applications and the more different resources you have, the more you rely on IT process automation to tie them all together. And if you offer self-service provisioning then through the cloud, then you need something in the back end to make this all happen, or you'll end up with a whole bunch of manual tasks, which is a significant problem. We've observed in the Demystifying Cloud study last time already that more and more companies are taking advantage of using multiple hypervisors, sometimes not just 2, but 3 or 4. And they do that for various reasons. But the fact is that cloud is positively correlated with the adoption of more than one hypervisor. And you can see 53% of companies in this chart on the top left, 53% of companies who have adopted cloud are using more than one hypervisor. And at the bottom right, you can see that multiple hypervisors make data center automation even more critical. So you see companies with multiple hypervisors is the blue bar, and single hypervisors are the red bar. And you see that the blue bar is much, much larger than the red one because those companies have found that automating their data centers when you have cloud and multiple hypervisors at the same time is becoming more important. And you can see network automation, service level management, data center infrastructure management, and VM lifecycle management are the most impressive examples for that, for companies coming to that realization. Okay, so the main proof point that data center automation is more important for later stages of cloud deployments, you can see here. The red bar shows later stage cloud deployments. The blue bar shows current cloud, release 1 cloud deployments. And you can see for capacity management, compliance management, SLA monitoring, the blue bar with release 1 cloud deployment is much shorter than what companies with later releases of cloud have in their data center. When we look at the integration between data center automation and cloud, we see that the majority of companies has not integrated data center automation with cloud. You can see it's actually, when you look it up, it's 56% of companies that know we have not integrated data center automation with cloud. Does data center automation only matter for cloud if it's integrated? No, data center automation is good for cloud either way. But obviously, the more integrated it is, the more ROI you can expect, because the more self-service requests and lifecycle management challenges are taken over by data center automation. So let's look at the key reasons for integrating data center automation with cloud. We ask basically, what did you integrate and why did you integrate it? We find that security is at the top, which is excellent, and it's pretty easy to explain because without automation, it's almost impossible to avoid human errors and inconsistency. So, most security leaks result from inconsistent provisioning or maintenance of existing resources. Agility, cloud without automation still involves a lot of manual steps. By definition, that takes it takes automation to take those steps away. So that's why a lot of companies integrate data center automation and cloud. And cost and compliance is another issue. Cloud leads to exploding requirements from the business unit, and automation can keep that cost down because, again, if I automate processes in my data center, they are the same every time, and I can standardize those, and I can make them secure and harden them, and that way I won't run into any compliance issues. So the next slide shows the importance of automation with growing business size. Again, smaller companies also develop more and more complex IT environments, but you see this integration between data center automation and cloud becomes more important for larger companies. Larger companies, you can see the blue bar, found that really significant correlation between integration of data center automation and cloud and the ROI of their cloud versus small enterprises. You see the green bar, they did not suffer from a lack of integration between data center automation and cloud. Trying to advance the slide, it's taking a second. When we look at the largest pain point, we find that IT process automation is the most significant pain point because that ties everything together, as I said before, and organizations know that they have to do more in that regard. Another interesting finding is that 45% of IT vice presidents and CTOs find that SLA management is the biggest bottleneck in cloud and data center automation combined, which is excellent in my opinion, because when you give, as I said, when you give business units all of this freedom, they still expect everything to work as it should and to be compliant as it should to meet the SLAs. So out of a sudden, it doesn't do that anymore. It's just as detrimental to the business, as not having cloud and as struggling, as keeping keep doing business as we did before cloud. So IT process automation and SLA management are the big pain points here. All in all, those numbers are pretty high, and they show that there is significant pain in cloud and in companies trying to receive the cloud ROI that they were planning in the beginning. So to sum this up, let's take a quick look before we go to Q&A. Let's take a quick look at the key DCA challenges for cloud ROI as perceived by companies. And we see security and compliance are actually at the top, and that goes in line with a lack of automation in these areas. High availability, and business continuity are also traditional issues that have to still be addressed. So we are really at the end of the day only in the second inning out of 9, if you will, maybe only in the first inning out of 9 when it comes to realizing the cloud ROI that we initially were hoping for. And yeah, and that's actually our main conclusion here. In general, we have a lot of automation homework to do, and on the upside, this impact of automation homework is very quantifiable. This study includes a lot more data points that show how many staff hours we can save, how much ROI by how much we can increase cloud ROI through data center automation. So that was one of the main positive contributions of this study, in my opinion, that we clearly showed that if you fix your data center automation challenges, if you do your homework in terms of data center automation, then you quantifiably increase your cloud ROI. And that's it from my end. I want to open this up for questions.
Great, thank you, Torsten. I wanted to also point out some additional resources to our audience today. I will also include the free research link in the follow-up email that you'll get from EMA tomorrow. To begin, Torsten, you had mentioned the term showback in your presentation. Can you define what you mean by that?
Well, showback is basically giving people a little bit of a guilty conscience for over-provisioning and for not being, as conscious of what they are doing as they should. So it basically, sends them an email, for example, at the end of the month saying, hey, here's what you did. And, that will make people more aware to please turn off VMs that you're not using, for example. So it's not chargeback. Chargeback means, I'm actually charging you part of your budget for this. It comes out of your budget. But it's, it's kind of a pre-stage for chargeback.
Thank you for clarifying that. Let's take one final question, and that is, should I buy my DCA tools from the same vendor as my private cloud software?
No, you should buy DCA tools that are aware of A, other automation tools, and B, that work well with private cloud software. But, if a vendor tells you that you have to buy both of them, as many automation tools and their cloud tool, that is a way of locking in organizations that doesn't really make sense. It's all about being open, and cloud is all about integrating with what you already have. You should not be forced to buy those tools from the same vendor.
Thank you, Torsten, and I wanted to thank our audience for joining us today. You will be receiving a follow-up email from Enterprise Management Associates, which will include the playback of today's webinar, so be on the lookout for that. Thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.